Greetings, loves. It is I, Tactical Girlfriend. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing well. Today, I'm going to be answering a question that is often asked of me, and that is, what is my comm setup? This is going to be a very nerdy topic, so to all the meatheads out there, I sincerely apologize. This one's for the nerds. So without further ado, let's jump in. But first, a word from my sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Thousand Pikes. Thousand Pikes is a minority and lefty-friendly labor co-op dedicated to providing accessible and affordable means of self-defense to people who have historically been excluded from mainstream gun culture. They believe that all people should have the right to see to their own defensive needs, and that the defensive needs of the most vulnerable are oftentimes the most acute, as they can't rely on the state for security in the way that the majority can. If you would like to learn more about Thousand Pikes, go to thousand-pikes.com for more information. Alright nerds, let's get to business. So why would you ever need a radio in the first place? Well, for one, in the event of an emergency, they can become very handy. If cell phone towers are damaged, or communications are jammed, or simply backed up, a radio provides you a very clear line of communication to anyone else who happens to have a radio. Radios are also useful for events, especially if you are providing anything like security and coordinating with a team at said events. These provide you with a clear line of communication at a distance with any individuals who are on your team, and are also useful in very loud environments where your voice simply won't travel as well. In my case, radios actually have been very useful at ranges, especially when I'm trying to coordinate with larger groups with multiple lanes of fire, multiple different pits around the area, or just communicating with a spotter. Radios in those instances are very, very useful, especially when it's loud. Last but not least, radios are useful for LARPers, so for all my tactical LARPers out there, I got you. Now, within the context of radios, I'm specifically going to be referring to handheld amateur radios today. Now, these do have some limitations that you should be aware of, specifically one of which is range. Without a repeater, these usually reach out to just a few miles in the most ideal conditions, depending on the power of the radio and the frequency that you're transmitting on. Another big limitation will be terrain. Specifically, areas with large hills or mountains and densely populated forests all can greatly limit the signal strength of your radio. You may want to consider certain frequencies that can travel above or around these barriers. Another consideration are buildings, especially in urban environments. Buildings wreak all sorts of havoc on radio signals and oftentimes stop them dead in their tracks, especially on these handheld radios. Buildings can be penetrated by certain frequencies a little bit better than others. However, they oftentimes just reflect radio waves and deflect them in all sorts of directions that you don't want them going. You can oftentimes be transmitting on one side of a city block and someone on the other side of it won't hear you at all. So be sure that you test this stuff thoroughly before you ever try to use it. Another thing are the legal limitations put in place by the FCC. Radios have to be certified to be able to transmit on different frequency bands, such as amateur bands, GMRS, FRS, and MURS. Furthermore, the FCC has placed transmit power limits on certain bands, such as MURS and FRS. The FCC does actually require you to get licenses and use FCC-assigned call signs on frequency bands, such as amateur bands and GMRS. Okay, let's talk about the handheld radio units themselves. There's a lot of amateur radio manufacturers out there, such as Yaesu, Kenwood, TYT, and Baofeng. This is the Baofeng BF-F8HP. There's also a lot of other different models under the Baofeng name. One of the most common ones you're going to see is the UV5R. There are also some legal limitations to using a Baofeng, so be sure that you do your research. The next most important component of your radio is going to be your antenna. This is what sends your signal out to the world and receives others. So make sure that you're carefully considering what is best for your needs here. Most radios do come with the default duckbill antenna. These are not very good. I do recommend replacing these immediately. They work in a pinch, but you can definitely do better. One really good upgrade for your antenna are whip antennas. This one from Nagoya is fantastic, and I do strongly recommend these. These are kind of a game changer for your transmit and receive capabilities. Now, these do come in different lengths. Longer is not necessarily always better for every radio, so make sure that you're doing your research to see what's best for you. Now, personally, I prefer folding antennas, such as this one from Abbree. This allows me to stow it in a compact manner and extend it when needed. I've also attached this gooseneck on here, which helps it to better conform to the shape of my gear so things don't get too awkward. Finally, let's talk about my specific radio setup. So everyone's setups are going to look very different. especially because you're going to mount it and integrate it to your gear in many different ways because you're all going to be using different gear in the first place. So carefully consider your options. Make sure that whatever you're doing fits you and only you. This is specifically my setup, and it's just simply going to be an example. I have everything mounted on my Ferro Concept Slickster. This is a plate carrier, and I've integrated everything into. I have my radio held in the side pouch of this elastic cummerbund here. I have my antenna, which extends upwards and at a slight angle. This allows it to clear any backpacks and be held in place so I can wear a backpack freely. It's perfectly comfortable, it stays out of the way, and I like it that way. From the radio, I have a cable routed through my magazine shingle and into a push-to-talk system. PTTs are absolutely crucial components here. They allow you to have a readily accessible button that allows you to press it and transmit over your frequency. I prefer to have this on my non-dominant side so that my dominant hand can still hold my weapon. This is a Disco 32 U94A. It's extremely robust and is highly recommended. What you want to use for your system entirely depends on what your mounting options are and what is most accessible to you. You want to carefully consider the mounting options and how you're placing it on your gear, because certain things bumping into a PTT button is going to make for a very bad day. You're going to be hot miking and pissing off everybody in your frequency, so just carefully consider that. From the PTT, I have everything piped into my active hearing protection. If you don't have active hearing protection, get some now. They're an absolute game changer and an essential in my book. They allow you to hear everything that's going on around you clearly while still protecting your ears. These are Peltor Comtac Vs. They not only offer active hearing protection, but they allow me to route all audio into it so that I can hear incoming radio messages, and they have an integrated microphone here, which allows me to, of course, send audio out. For a more economically viable solution, I have my original comm setup mounted here on my chest rig. Same principles apply here, just simply using more accessible hardware. On the side of the chest rig, I've added an elastic pocket here, which houses the same exact radio, same folding antenna, which is routed through the straps of my chest rig. From there, I have a cable routed into a shoulder mic. This is the comm mountain shoulder mic. It's both a combination microphone and PTT. One downside is that you have to direct your voice towards it when you transmit, but it is what it is. And it's actually held up very well throughout various terrain that I've dragged it through and weather. I wouldn't trust it nearly as much as a Disco 32, but it works as an economically viable option here. From there, I have a 3.5mm cable, which is routed into, yet again, active hearing protection. These are actually the Howard Light Impact Sports. These are fantastic ear pro for the money. They're very affordable. Not nearly as good sound quality as the Comtacs, and of course there's no integrated microphone, but for what it is, I can't recommend these enough. But that wraps up my little demo of my comm setup. I hope this is some good food for thought for folks out there, whether you're reevaluating your comm setup or if you're just curious about radios in general and kind of on the fence. I do strongly recommend that folks have one or two on hand. Couldn't really hurt, and in worst case, you have some fun talking to your friends on something that's not one of these. If you enjoyed this video, go and like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. If you have subscribed in the past, you may want to check again, as YouTube's been randomly unsubscribing people for no apparent reason. And if you do want to support the channel further, you can go to patreon.com/tacticalgf. This channel is not at all monetized. In fact, I refuse to run ads on it for YouTube. So everything that you see here is brought to you by viewers like you. You can check out the end of the video for the names of my biggest contributors. Well, that does it. Until next time, please be good to each other out there. And as always, please take care. Bye!